Hey, fellow Unwatchafites. We talk a lot this episode about the zone of interest chances at the Oscars, as well as some of the other nominees. Remember, you can find out how it all turns out with us in real time this Sunday, March 10th, at the second annual Unwatchables Oscars live stream. Last year was a blast. We will be on video. You can interact with us via chat, share your own thoughts, ask us questions. I've seen all the films. Seth has gone on Vision Quest to imagine what he thinks they're about. So come hang out. We are going to get through Hollywood's most insufferable night together. That's this Sunday, March 10th, starting 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Check our Instagram, Twitter, or Letterboxd for the link. Hello, and welcome to Unwatchables, where the best defense against cinematic trauma is a good offense. I am Marc Dottavio.
Seth Troyer, I am.
And today we are joined by our good friend Amy Hensarling of the podcast Watch This List. And how better to welcome her back than with the latest grim Nazi drama. Renowned writer-director Jonathan Glazer's new film, The Zone of Interest, is cold, disturbing, and as of this recording, a major Oscar contender. We will discuss what makes this a uniquely unsettling take on a familiar, unsettling subject, and whether this might be the most unconventional Best Picture nominee ever. Let's get in the zone.
Marc, that was fantastic, Marc.
Thank you.
Say,
I fell on my face, though. Yeah.
That was a wonderful introduction, and thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, this is our second time having Amy Hensarling on the podcast. She has her own podcast called Watch This List, which is wonderful, on which both Seth and I have appeared. Mm-hmm. And since last being on this podcast, she has rocketed to Letterboxd stardom. Amy was quoted, she was blurbed on the annual Letterboxd highest rated movies list that went around. So we are so honored to be in your presence.
Wow.
I remember when Amy sent me this, she just sent me the link to it, to the list. And you were like, oh my God, Marc. And I thought that I was looking at it and was just like, oh, I think Poor Things was at number 2 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
On the list.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, cool. Yeah, we both love Poor Things. And it wasn't until I pulled it up later that I was like, oh my God, no, this is Amy's words underneath it. And I had to go back and tell you why I wasn't so excited
Totally
the first
dismissed.
time.
What was so funny is that I didn't correct him at all. Like he did it. And then like a couple hours later, he was like, Amy, I'm sorry. I completely missed that your name was on there and that was your review. And I was like, Marc, please. Okay.
I buried the lead.
Yeah, that was quite funny though.
Yeah. But they didn't even tell you about that, right?
They didn't even tell me, no. I don't know that they do. Like, you just have to sort of like, and Cormac is the person that messaged me. He and Lau both were like, hey, did you know that you were on here? That's so exciting. And I was like, no.
Oh.
I may never have
It's good that somebody pays attention then to that.
I'm glad. Now I will.
It might have happened to me and I didn't even know.
Truth stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm still not going to go
my
through
Mr.
all those
Limpet
emails,
review.
The cable guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about how Watch This List has evolved? Because I believe, is it that you kind of have 2 different series going on right now?
Right, Marc. So yes, I will always have Amy's progress because my progress will never end. I hope, as a human person. Yes.
Sounds optimistic of you.
Yeah. I hope that I always progress. So there's that whole strain, which has kind of changed as well because I just started doing audio. Like, before I was doing progress with other people, and then I felt compelled when I did Exotica to just do it alone. And I quite like that format. It's very interesting. It's a lot more intimate than with a guest. And then now I have.
I loved the Eternal Sunshine one you did. It was very much a sad little thing to listen to on a cold Valentine's Day where I was eating cookies all by myself in the morning.
Oh, Well, that one I felt like that was the best movie to do on Valentine's Day because a lot of people are in that situation where they're either single or just kind of sad. It does sort of bring up those issues of like letting go and remembering and all of that. So I'm glad that you liked it, but yeah, I felt like that was the perfect movie to do that day.
It's hard for me to imagine just sitting down in front of the mic and talking alone.
I know.
That must have been liberating.
It is. When I do it, it's like right after I watch the movie usually, and it's like late at night since I don't have to use the camera. So, like I can have all the lights off if I want and just like talk. And it's quite interesting. I don't know. There's a whole level of like that guard that's kind of removed in that sense.
I should just kick Marc out of this whole thing. And
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you can just take the
Go on
lead
my
for
own.
one?
Yeah, and just do it at midnight in your bed and do midnight thoughts with Seth Troyer.
That's really what this is all about.
I'd have to work on my ASMR
bed.
voice because Amy has a great one.
It's true.
That is what I'm told, and what ASMR is just like soothing, isn't it?
It
like,
can be
I'm
all
not
sorts of things.
Okay, what is
Hello, movie lovers.
Marc? What is
That's my Amy.
What is the?
I'm not an expert on this, honestly. Like most things on the internet, I figured it was something that like perverts listen to. Have
right.
like a pretty lady walking them through chocolate chip cookie instructions or something.
That is not perverse to
I don't
listen
know,
to a
but
sexy lady voice, okay, and get titillated by it.
no, I think people it just helps relax them. I'm just assuming
Yeah.
there's always some weird nerd on the other side listening to it, but
Well, and isn't there also like other sounds like, I don't know, don't they also do like other sounds other than just your voice? Because
Yeah,
mine
there's
is
all
just my
kinds.
voice.
There's like I'm a bee buzzing around your ears or something. I don't know.
Oh wow.
Because they have those like
Oh, boy.
360 audio things. So if you're listening to it, you can feel like they're all over your head or something. I've just heard about this.
Sure,
he's
you
just
have, Seth.
he's just reads them for the articles.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
Wow.
And then,
Before the internet, people just must have had to be weird in public. Like,
or they just weren't
amazing.
comforted. I feel like ASMR is a nice
Mhm.
idea if they're trying to
Yeah.
like soothe people and make people feel, warm and cozy. It's kind of a nice
well,
idea.
if that's your thing, check out Amy's Progress and you will
You will feel warm and cozy.
have a little bit of a starter pack on that. But what about the other series where you...
Okay, so this is now She Said, which is my women's series. That's
Ooh.
I didn't know
the
about
next
that.
one.
We're
Seth
real
will be on
friends
next
now,
week.
and I don't know about this.
Seth, I'm disappointed. My Jetta and I did the first episode of this because I stopped the comfort films and then did She Said, which I was inspired by Poor Things to do.
Sick.
After I saw Poor Things with Emma Stone.
All right, we'll be looking forward to more of those. You can find those on all podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube to see the video versions as well. And our topic today is, I believe, the first movie that we've ever talked about that's actually still in theaters while we're speaking about it. Obviously, that depends on when you end up listening to this episode, but we're recording before the Oscars right now, and this is a film that's nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Sound,
froze.
and Best International Feature Film, formerly Best Foreign Film. And isn't that weird how you can get nominated for Best Picture and Best International Feature Film and even win them both? Which, I don't know, that doesn't seem fair, does it? I think
Almost
Parasite
like you
won
just
both of
made
those.
a good movie and it gets awarded as a good movie. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah,
get
I
the
don't know why they
distinction,
do that.
Why it exists at all.
I think it's because like the different countries get to officially submit one that they decide is their representative film. And I guess actually not sure if Zone of Interest counts as, I think it's technically the UK, even though it was obviously filmed in Germany. So
Did
Anyways,
they
I'm
do
getting ahead of ourselves.
did they do the same thing for Anatomy of a Fall?
Uh, I don't. Is that nominated for Best Picture?
Yeah, isn't it?
Okay, then actually, I think it's not
You
nominated for Best
see what?
International Feature Film. I don't
Then
have the
why?
list in front of me, but I've seen all these movies.
It doesn't make any sense though why it would be Zone but not Anatomy, because I mean Anatomy actually is half English.
Right.
I mean it's
I don't
French
know.
and English, so odd. I don't know.
I guess the focus now is it being international and not necessarily the
Right.
language thing, but whatever. The Oscars are stupid,
Yeah.
but it's
And
interesting
we're
that
gonna
this
watch them.
movie is nominated.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, but let's talk about Jonathan Glazer. So, this is an English filmmaker who is only his fourth film, but he started making films in 2000. So, really, if you take his first film, Sexy Beast, in 2000, and just kind of imagine it came out in 1999, that would make one film for every decade that he's made. So it's kind of an event when he has a new movie come out. This is his first one since, I believe, Under the Skin was 2013. So it's been 10 years since his last one.
What a lazy guy.
Yeah, for sure. Him and Kubrick, all they want to do is sit around and watch football and
Slackers.
eat potato chips instead of working. But he gets compared to Kubrick a lot, not just because of how far apart their films are, but he's a very rigorous, conceptual, exacting, some would say even cold filmmaker.
Cold, intense.
For sure.
Perfectionist.
And it's kind of fun to rank his movies since there's only 4. It doesn't take you very long. And I know Amy has kind of an unusual ranking in that it's different from mine.
Anything different than Marc is unusual.
Yeah.
Well, and I also don't know if Seth can join us because I don't know if he completed the filmography. Did you, Seth?
I can rank the 3 I saw.
Well, let's
So
go through them
sad.
real quick because we should talk about him a little bit. We'll get through Sexy Beast real quick since that's the one that didn't interest Seth. But that was his first film that came out in 2000.
I have so much going on.
Seth is busy.
You had
and
so many
important.
cookies to eat alone on Valentine's Day listening to Amy. And
Oh, Marc, low.
what? That's what he said.
Ache. Don't you make fun of me.
I was
My
single on
bellyache.
Valentine's Day too. Yeah, anyway.
Well, Sexy Beast was the debut. Yes. Right.
Yes, and pretty unusual for him. It stands out, I think, even though it's very much a part of the early 2000s stylish British crime film wave, it stands out, I think, visually and in terms of atmosphere, even though, I don't know, it is at the bottom of my rankings of his films. There's things that I enjoy about it, but to me, it does feel very much like a first-time director who is just psyched to try out every single loopy, like, visual and audio idea that he has, with material that isn't quite as interesting as his visual approach is. But maybe you disagree, Amy.
Well, the thing that separates Sexy Beast to me from the other ones is that it's actually pleasant and goes well as far as our main character. Like, I mean,
Relatively.
he goes through a lot, but like it seems like Glazer loves him and cares about him and his wife, and they have like a very loving relationship. And it just has a lot more humanity. Like as Glazer, as you see the progression of what he does, it gets less and less endearing, I guess, or just like it becomes more and more inhuman, I think.
Yes. More from early Kubrick to later Kubrick. You
Where
could
we're
say.
just yeah, you end on Zone, but then right before that was Under the Skin. It's just getting more and more into like darkness and nihilism, and so Sexy Beast is quite nice comparatively in that sense, in like an emotional sense, I feel like. But yeah,
it is the funnest.
And it looks very different than Birth, like very, very different. It looks like a different director to me because Birth is so sophisticated and polished.
For sure. Birth is where things get interesting in 2004.
Yeah.
And this
as
one,
far as Marc's concerned,
we have all seen. Yeah. And
yes, we have all seen, so Seth can weigh in.
Absolutely. This has wild premise where a 10-year-old boy shows up claiming to be the dead husband of Nicole Kidman's character. And
Sean.
she comes to believe him, and he knows certain things, and things unfold from there. And I know you're a big fan of that movie, right, Amy?
Huge Birth fan. Birth is in my top 10.
So I'm guessing that would be the
Wow.
top of
Intense.
that's the top of your Jonathan Glazer rankings, then, I would guess.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Birth I've seen, like, I mean, I would watch it right now. Like, Birth I will rewatch until the end of time, over and over. I love it so much. And I'm sad that a lot of people have not seen it. It's quite underrated. Which I'm assuming that, Mark, you are going to underrate it.
I already did underrate it, actually.
Yeah.
No, it is. I do like the movie, and
Uh-huh.
it really, really shows him coming into this just crazy, eerie, off-kilter, unsettling style, where things appear, even when things appear to be normal, there is something just off and a little drawn out about it that makes you uncomfortable, and that's really what I like about that movie. There are parts of it that are just get a little too preposterous for me, but I don't know. What did you think, Seth?
Yeah, what do you think, Seth? I'm interested.
I think it kind of rules. It's definitely him being cold. It's a good introduction to him, I think. His like cold Kubrickness. I love all the long
Kubrick-esque.
shots, and it's also an introduction to just how important sound is in his movies, and in like a really bombastic, very like downtown, like Steve Reich kind of soundtrack going on, like with these wild minimalist strings and stuff. Uh, and I did, I don't. It has like this Michael Haneke thing, like of just like the darkness and the starkness and the sadness that it has. It kind of makes it so that I don't enjoy it all that much, but it's a very well made movie. I'm impressed, and I like ambiguousness. I like that it is ambiguous still, even at the end. I think for me, I got a little hung up on giving too much data for all of the possibilities to the point where I think like having less data I would have appreciated. So I could have like, I don't know, maybe gravitated one way or another. But that's hard to talk
Hmm.
about without like I don't know if we're spoiling that movie in a podcast about a different movie, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess we could probably leave that vague, but
Okay.
there is a
Which is what I'm wanting
there's
anyway in the movie. So
right.
and Nicole
There
Kidman
is
is
a big
smoking. Wow.
yes.
Pixie cut
Yes.
Kidman.
Yes.
It's like I've never really considered her to be all that, I don't know. She's pretty. She's always been pretty, but I was like, wow, that's the ideal Kidman form.
Kidman. Even more than like Eyes Wide Shut or Moulin Rouge or
It's the pixie cut. Something about the brunette pixie
okay, it's the
cut.
hair.
Yeah.
And the
Steam was
sad.
coming out of his ears.
I made the Kidman joke while we were watching it, had never seen anything on Letterboxd about it, and then I went home and I was like, that's gonna be a great joke about birth on my Letterboxd, and somebody else made it.
Kidman versus
And it has like
Kidman,
4,000 likes, of course. I
Oh.
could have been the contender.
Oh. Yeah, you could have been somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, that movie, it does have a divisive kind of twist / explanation kind of thing that drops later in the movie that I think determines what a lot of people end up feeling about it. That actually didn't bother me so much as just, I don't know, how welcoming everybody was to this little twerp instead of just tossing him out the window. And
Because Mark, it could have been true. What if it were true, okay? Like
oof,
like some outrageous things cannot just be ignored. You have
right.
to you have
I
to
Yeah,
would
I
have needed a
guess
real magic trick from him, though.
I guess that is the thing. I could see, Kidman is in a whole other her character's in a whole strange, like whatever it is, pathological or mystical, we don't know, but I think she's wrapped up in whatever's going on with Sean, which we're not sure if it's paranormal or pathological or in the brain. But there's just so many other characters that I like they're not stepping in, which I was kind of like, whoa, they're all kind of a little out there.
Yeah, I think because like the scene where he meets with the brother-in-law, where things are like, oh, he actually knows information, and the guy's like, how could he possibly know this? That it begins to, there's just enough information, I feel, to where you could reasonably question it if you take the leap of faith that such a thing could even be possible. If you don't take that, then of course just throw him out. You know what I mean?
Right.
You'd have to kind of believe in some sort of magic or
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm surprised
Sure.
whatever
the
you wanna
whole
put that.
family kind of has some belief. It seems. Yeah.
I think they're just
Or
trying
at
to
least
support
tolerance
her.
for having him around.
Yeah.
Right.
Which again,
But-
I am throwing
yeah.
that twerp out the window.
Mark is like,
But-
excuse
put
me,
it in a
no.
bag. Throw it outside.
Okay, so wait, so far, Mark, what is Birth above or below Sexy Beast?
Above, yes, I do
Okay,
like
okay,
Birth, and
okay.
the acting is great, and the
Okay.
atmosphere and the direction, all of the stuff that makes Jonathan Glazer a good filmmaker, I think, are in full force there.
Okay, so you and I are aligned right now in this moment.
All right, and technically, we'll just throw Seth in there too.
We'll just throw Seth in there.
Well,
Yeah,
Sexy
and I
Beast
promise
is my
listeners
least
we're-
favorite one. So
Yeah, it is. He couldn't even get it started.
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
promise we're getting to Zone of Interest. There's only one more movie
Okay, go
in
ahead.
between there, which was Under the Skin, which we should spend a little bit of time on because I have a feeling this is where we're all going to diverge the most.
Oh.
And I think it's
because
his
this
most
is
popular movie, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably his most popular movie. I mean, it has Scarlett Johansson in it, so we have a big movie star, and it is a wild ride. And I mean, she's basically an alien who goes around preying on men, but
Men.
just putting it that way is really underselling what the movie is like because
Right, because
it
that's
is
the
very
plot line to the movie
abstract.
Species, which is really
Right.
stupid.
Which came up on HBO afterwards as a recommendation.
Which was hilarious. But Under the Skin fucking rips.
Yeah.
I think it is like an exceptional modern. If you want to call it a horror movie, you can. It's like the best kind of horror movie, and that it doesn't neatly fit into the genre necessarily. And I appreciate that about it. I think as like a visual experience, again, Kubrick comes to mind. This opening is Beyond Jupiter Forever or whatever. It just goes, which you don't know what it is. Like there's like this incredible visual and musical feast at the beginning of this movie that is kind of like, I think it's her being formed or something like that, or because you don't, also like one of my favorite parts of the movie is that you don't know, it's not really said if she's an alien or a fairy or some kind of terrestrial being even that we just don't know about.
Everyone just seems to assume alien.
Alien.
I
yeah.
don't,
But
yeah.
if you're just going into the movie cold, it doesn't give you any exposition at all about where she came from, and you just gradually find out what she's doing. I think it's because it's based on a book about an alien that everyone just kind of makes that leap, and I think it's a reasonable leap. But yeah, even like you were saying, Seth, you could call it horror. Technically, it's sci-fi, but the way it plays is, 2001: A Space Odyssey is technically sci-fi, but the experience, it's more like watching an experimental film or a meditation. And it's all about the visceral experience and the way that we are seeing humanity and the whole world through someone who is literally not, there's no there. There's no actual human character processing any of it, even though it kind of looks like it. And to me, it's all about our perspective as an audience and the tension between that and what this non-human perspective is, and us understanding what the guys that she's talking to are going through. But she only understands just enough to be able to trap them, which it turns out is not understanding very much at all. But anyways, Amy hates this film, right?
I do.
Exciting twist.
I try really, I mean, I hate hating films. like it's such a miserable thing to like dislike a movie really hard. And when I first saw it, it was actually, so I had a movie review site called Movie Pancakes with my buddy
Oh,
Steve.
Yum.
Yeah, it made no sense and we didn't try to explain it. And then that my first movie review for the site was Under the Skin, and I just like bashed it. I mean, I just hated its guts. And then when I met Jetta and Rob, they were like, "Well, would you ever reconsider it? Like reassess it. You're older, right? And like wiser." And they love it. So we collabed it with Adam, and we had a group chat going as we were all watching it because we'd all seen it. These 3 people all give it 5 stars. We're going on, and I like literally couldn't even engage in the chat because I felt so like bad.
this is a safe
And
place,
just
Amy. Let it out.
man. Yeah, so my take is like not great. I mean, it's in
What do you
the
mean?
major minority.
That
I
doesn't
mean,
make it a bad take.
I think it's kind of a bad take because I'm unable to appreciate its strengths. The best thing about it are the music and the sound design and like the atmosphere, but to me it's just so despairing and empty, and I just feel awful watching it. I think it's because of how I feel that I just can't stand it. It just bums me out to no end, and I can't even appreciate it because I just feel so bad.
Okay, so it
I
sounds like
mean,
we're kind of on the same page about what the movie is doing, and that just does nothing for you
I thought
like
you were gonna
in
the
say
particular,
ideas,
right?
like the ideas aren't there. Like there's not enough there.
Or
That's
just
kind of what bothers you.
no, that it's just that it's so hopeless. It seems very, very, very hopeless to me, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse as the movie goes on. When she can't have like any experience of happiness. I also honestly don't love movies where men suck. I'm realizing
That's
this about
this is
myself.
all fair.
Like I really don't like movies where I just saw one yesterday where like every single man in the film is awful. I really don't enjoy movies that are that way.
There's the one guy with
So
the weird face. He's kind of nice.
yeah, and then
well, he gets away for a little bit, but then
yeah,
yeah, well,
yeah,
Oh well,
yeah.
yeah. I'm just saying he's a
Let's
nice guy.
That's true. That is the sole
yeah,
person,
he does seem
and
nice.
and there's only one good person in Zone of Interest. So Glazer did it again, where there's literally only one character who is any good at all, and otherwise it's just very bleak.
All right. Well, it sounds like Under the Skin then we're all on flip sides here, right? I mean, that's my favorite
Yes,
Glazer, and I'm
I
assuming that you're
assumed.
the mirror
Yes,
image.
yeah, that's my least. And then Seth, is that your favorite between that and Birth?
Yeah, with some, yeah, with quite a
Okay.
bit out, like by a full head of a horse, I think. But I like all his movies a lot that I've seen.
All right, Mark, spit it out. We got to get to Zone.
All right, zone of interest. And well, I also want to make sure we point out that Under the Skin has like maybe one of the best original scores I've ever heard. That is
Right.
amazing by Micah Levi. And they returned to score the zone of interest. And I think if this, Seth's playing. Is that from Under the Skin?
That's Under the Skin.
Okay.
I think that
Yeah,
was
for
an
sure.
elk walking by my room, actually.
Yeah. So I was excited to see this person coming back. Although, so this is not nominated for best score. It's nominated for best sound, which I guess is something at least. But
Who's
that
beating this
won't go to
score? What do
Micah
they got?
Levi. Gosh, I wish hang on. Tony can edit this out. I'm going to pull up the list just so that we can,
You can
Score
say how
rip,
many
I can see this.
that it's nominated for.
especially once the lights went down and the Kung Fu Panda preview was over, and it's just a black
he-
screen for like a
Mark, does he
full
edit
minute
the
and a
video
half.
too? He edits the video too, right?
Only if there's something major to take out. This may very well be left in the video. So
Great. Okay.
I think this
We'll
is riveting.
see.
Well,
Like and
I
Yeah,
should say,
no,
subscribe.
okay, actually, at least the Poor Things score is nominated, and that is tremendous
that's
as well,
That
fantastic.
in
was
my
good.
opinion.
Yeah.
So I'd be okay with that winning. But Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, not really sure. We needed the 20th variation on John Williams' original score to be in there over this, but
Wow.
anyway, this is still a movie nominated for 5 Oscars. I'm not sure if it's going to win any of them. Maybe Best International Feature Film I could see. But another interesting thing is that this is based on a book, which
Yes.
it's funny watching this and Under the Skin, because these are like the two movies that seem the least like they could possibly be based on a book.
Yeah.
And apparently they barely are, that they are like barely related to the source material. I read a little summary of the Zone of Interest book, and it's really like, it doesn't, I would never even think this was related to it, which I think is a great
Maybe,
approach for adaptations, honestly. Is it
well,
just
maybe he just wanted the title,
scavenge for
so
parts?
he said this is
Mm.
based on this book because he wanted to call it Zone of Interest.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, like, oh, it's just loosely based, and it's just because you want that to be the name of your movie, and you can't get away with that otherwise. I don't know.
Right. And he tends to spend several years developing projects and paring down the scripts, and they end up being
Mm-hmm.
radically different than what they started as. And I
Mhm.
believe that that's the case here. So, yeah, let's talk about what this movie is doing, because I feel like this has a very clear concept, and that's what Jonathan Glazer tends to do. Is he very rigorously adheres to an idea that is generally very visceral. So, in
He's
Under
really
the
good at
Skin, we
elevator
have
pitches.
yes, exactly. He has a good like log line, I guess, for what you're going to get for each of these.
Yeah, like this
Seth,
in Birth, like totally.
how
like,
would you have
whoa.
pitched this, Seth? How would you pitch Zone of Interest
Oh, it's been
to
so easy to
execs?
everyone. It's been like there's this crazy movie about the people that live next door to Auschwitz. And that's just instantly everybody's like,
That's
"Whoa,
it?
that sounds crazy. What
Whoa.
the fuck?" That's an
Well,
elevator
not
pitch,
exactly, yeah, a
you know.
studio executive pitch, but as far as describing it to people,
Well, if it was a studio executive, I would throw in there's a love interest and there's all this, there's
yes.
a
You just
funny
make it up and
guy
then
and he's and
not
a
put it.
chubby guy.
Uh-huh.
In the end, the
just to
Nazis all
satiate 'em.
die.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 This is like how Mel Brooks talked about, like, when he was with executives, he would just say whatever, just so they'd be like, "Oh, that sounds great," and then he wouldn't do any of it.
Yeah.
But he would say it just to get yes.
That's how Mel Brooks got the Zone of Interest made.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we're Under the Skin is all right, we're seeing humanity through the eyes of a non-human who doesn't understand them at all. And here we are basically spending time with the family that lives literally next door to Auschwitz. Like they're separated by a stone wall. And the family living there is the family of the commanding like Nazi operator of it, who kind of has devised all of the
Rudolf
plans and is in charge. The
Holst.
commandant.
Holst?
The
Yeah.
commandant, yeah.
I'm very
Yeah.
okay with getting this name wrong if I did.
Sure.
Seth, you did beautifully.
And they build this little paradise house with a family in there, and we never actually see what is going on the other side of the wall, but it is constantly present. We are always hearing things. There's always these little background shots of smoke rising, and it's very insidious. And there's only very rarely do the two worlds cross in any way, right? Like we do have the commandant taking his family swimming in the river and starting to realize that they're getting covered in like ash from the crematorium. But
yes. And there's like one like scene of him at work, basically. I think there's like only one scene. I think that's him. Like he's just at like he's about with the trains coming in, bringing in the prisoners, and there's just smoke.
Is that the one where it's just a close up of his face, basically?
All we can see is his face.
He's just hanging out,
and we just hear like gunfire, and there's all this stuff happening, and he's just that's pretty much the only time we ever see him, and we don't see anything around him, but we know he's there in it. And then the next scene, he's back home eating some breakfast, with his wife and kids.
Normal.
Exactly. So the juxtaposition is them carrying on their, banal, mundane life while this is constantly in the background. And there's a few there are a few variations here where all of a sudden we have these little interludes with I believe it's a Polish girl who is like picking apples and leaving them in Auschwitz, and they're filmed with this like negative image effect that makes it almost
Gorgeous.
otherworldly, almost looks like
Mhm.
animation at times. And I think it works because even though it's kind of breaking the form of the movie a bit, it provides this texture that otherwise isn't there, and it's so strange and eerie. I don't know. Did you have any particular thoughts about those sequences, or just the actual mode this
Yeah,
is
because
operating in?
well, afterwards I read that Glazer put her in there because he wanted there to be a spark of goodness. So
Sure.
yeah, like I mean, he wanted there to be at least one character in there, even if it was just part of like a fairy tale story that the guy was reading to his
Mhm.
children. That you saw someone doing something that was kind-hearted or sort of even acknowledging that the situation was occurring, which the family doesn't. There's like this massive denial of place and where they are. So I feel like that intercutting, even though it looks less real, is actually the only reality that's being brought in.
Yeah, and
Sure.
I
Because yeah,
appreciate
they
it
don't even.
whether it's a dream sequence or not. I do appreciate it. It's a very human touch on his
Yeah.
part in an otherwise, like, I don't know. It'd be very easy for him to continue doing what he's doing throughout the movie as an exercise in just pure like darkness, which the rest of the movie pretty much is. It just kind of proves that there is, some humanity in him that he wants to still put in here, or some little prayer almost that's in the middle of all this. There's also this sequence where the little girl, or is it maybe it's a little girl? I forget who it is, but they find
Yes.
a score that one of the prisoners wrote, like within the walls of Auschwitz, and it's this person is probably dead now, but uh, she goes home and plays the music on the piano that this person wrote, and there's lyrics about wanting to be free and things like that, which I thought was another great touch. And both of those are still keeping with the haunted, very stark atmosphere, and they don't go too far into like sentimentality or something. It's just the truth that there is also like some light there, that, or at least a yearning for light in this dark situation, and it would be dismissive to say that that's not there also. um
I agree.
Yeah, and so there is a sequence later on towards the end of the movie that's kind of another rupture where I don't know, maybe we should say that a little bit because that is going into like the ending of the
Well,
movie.
Marc, how do you feel about this movie?
Okay, so I think this is a really interesting answer to the question of how do you make a movie that's dealing with the Holocaust that
Mm-hmm.
acknowledges the horrors of it without
Showing
it
it.
seeming exploitative, right? Because as soon
Mm-hmm.
as you go in and you're showing the gas chambers or something, it just starts to feel like this is imagery that is too real to be exploited to just horrify an audience, and that's a way of like devaluing it. So I think it's a really brilliant thing to never actually show that and just keep it all simmering in the background.
Auditory,
And
basically.
yeah, exactly. And so I think that's a really good approach, for this movie to take. And the I think it does that one thing very well. And by the end, I guess I was just hoping that it was going to take it somewhere further and maybe a little more challenging than where it ended up. Because I got the point of the movie, like what it was doing fairly quickly. Like it becomes obvious that this is how things are going to proceed. And the focus is so much on how mundane and unexciting everything is that's going on next door while this horrible evil is happening right under their noses. And I don't know, I guess a little of that goes a long way for me. Like I've seen a lot of people compare this to Jean Dielman, which is another movie that we covered on this podcast that has a lot of just mundane tasks. But what happens with that movie is it becomes riveting because we're clocking all the small changes that are happening, throughout the routine as the movie goes on and on and on. And I'm not sure that this movie really benefits from the repetition or that it reveals anything necessarily new. And I also think that like the way that this regards them from such a distance, that it almost makes it a little too easy just to dismiss these guys as detestable, which is true, but not that illuminating. So it's almost like I felt the movie was almost making it too easy for us to separate ourselves from this family. Where if we had actually maybe gotten a little bit involved with their drama, which almost happens when they're forced to move and the wife freaks out about it. And basically it's like we build a whole home here and is like almost like a conventional, scene, between a husband and wife trying to do what's best for their family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is like a tent post that for me, like suddenly the movie opened up and there was something really wild about that scene. You having to almost remind yourself that this isn't just a normal romantic back and forth. She's saying she likes living next door to Auschwitz, but she just is honestly like this is their home and they like it there and everything like that. And that was fascinating to witness and everything, and them having to sort of make amends and figure out how they're going to do that as a couple. I did feel similarly that I felt like in I was waiting for another that like the next thing to swing to sort of in amongst all this, and I felt like it didn't quite. It didn't happen.
Right. I wish it would
Yeah,
have ran with that
I see what
moment.
you're saying. Yeah, because it's almost like, I mean, this is what I think that both you and I, Mark, didn't like about Maestro is that when there's like elevated arguments between the two of them, they're so shallow and like unrelatable that you can't even feel them. Whereas this one actually did feel somewhat real. Their argument did. Like in Maestro, when they were arguing, I was like, this is such a bad script. And like, there was just so many things in my mind that were pulling me out of it. Whereas in Zone, when they have that conversation by the lake, it actually feels like, oh, they're like a real couple who's having a real conversation. And yet you're very, very aware of where they are. So it's hard to not be in two places at once in your own mind.
Right. And if it would have really run with that, I think it would have been much more challenging to focus on
Mm-hmm.
something like that, to give us a chance to maybe forget for a little and then be reminded about what's going on. And it's kind of like this is regarding the characters like Scarlett Johansson's character does in Under the Skin. Like they're just kind of being studied under a microscope. And I think that distance between us, it allows us to observe them and, make the clear observation of the banality of evil, right? Because any film that's going to talk about the Holocaust from the perspective of the perpetrators is usually going to be some variation on, look how normal people can coexist with this and justify it and let it happen. And I'm definitely glad that these people aren't like conflicted about it at all. It's not like I wanted one of them to suddenly start feeling bad about it. And I don't think there's ever
Right.
any hint that they have any compunction like whatsoever with what's going on. And I think that's good. That would have been a bad turn to put in like conventional drama in that way.
Right. You don't
Right.
get
But
this
yeah,
far and suddenly
Mhm.
have a dramatic break with like, wait, what are we doing? It's like, no, they firmly believe that these are their enemies that are being disposed of, that have wronged them over the walls, which they don't say, but it's very, if that felt very apparent, more apparent than in a lot of Holocaust sort of media, I feel like, which I don't know, that feeling that they like, it's not necessarily that they're having these, they are linked to evil, but it is this idea that these people are bad and they did wrong to us somehow, even in just like the little exchange between the wife and her mother, or is it the mother or her aunt that comes to visit her in the garden and everything, who is kind of conflicted about this. So this is where you live, huh? But like, even in that, there is this like, well, we're doing the good thing here. Like, if anything, what's over there, on the other side of the wall, is a sign of things are moving in the right direction or towards victory or whatever it is, which is just like a wild thing that you feel when you're in this place that is built on that. That being the logic that needs to hold together, or else once it doesn't, it's all horrifying. And
I feel like it. Oh, go ahead, Seth.
oh yeah, it's like, if anything, it's a true belief, or layers of denial are going on here. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's less about the banality of evil than it is about being completely brainwashed. Like that what maybe we could relate to is not necessarily that we would ignore evil, but that we could get to a place where we don't even see it as evil.
You could be so wrong, so
Correct.
entirely wrong.
Your thinking could be so off, and you could be so indoctrinated with the wrong information that you could be in a scenario where atrocities are being committed and your perception of them is wrong. That's what scares me, is not that like you could get used to evil. That's not the idea that frightens me. The idea that frightens me is that I could have a viewpoint that's seriously wrong and not know it.
Yeah.
And
it might help.
and like live next to it. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, maybe those are kind of related still, that it's easier for you to not challenge that view that you have if you're compartmentalized, away from it. Well, although obviously the commandant, it is assumed, sees everything that's actually going on and is only more excited about making it more efficient. But the wife and the rest of the family are pretty sectioned off from the ugly stuff.
Right.
And it's actually one of the first scenes is them talking about this new contraption that will allow them to more efficiently, while they're burning bodies, on one end they can be unloading ash out of the back. And I was immediately kind of clocking that as, okay, this movie is kind of about how we can have two things going on at once, where so at the same time we're doing this, we're cleaning up. And yeah, it does all that stuff really well. I just think in the end it almost feels like it ends up playing it safe in a way that I can't imagine is what Glazer intended to do. That it was too easy just to sit back and regard it with horror. And obviously it's kind of easy to feel that towards Nazis, but it would have been much more provocative maybe if the mirror was held up to us somehow by involving us a little more directly instead of keeping us at such a distance.
Like movies where you relate to the villain and you actually kind of feel like you understand where they're coming from or why they're doing something, is obviously more effective than just believing they're outright black and white, wrong and right.
See,
Sure, or even if it just got me to care, not to see where they were coming from necessarily, but just, I don't know, got me involved in a little bit of a like, gee, why am I getting involved about what's good for these children and moving and what a hassle moving would be? Like, I just imagine how much further it could push that would make you uncomfortable.
It's just so tricky though. That's the thing. I think he is at a little bit, I mean, with a lot of Holocaust media, it's a lot of damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's like, because I also I like what you're saying, and I think I might have like appreciated the movie. It might have been something deeper with that, but I think there would have been a lot of room for error. And I think that's what he was trying to avoid by doing this whole clinical, almost like reality TV. It sounded like they had like not hidden cameras, but just
Hidden cameras.
everything's
No, he
like,
did have hidden
oh,
cameras.
really hidden? Yeah, they're all
Yes.
just like stationary. There's the worry is like even a fast zoom or a flourishing artful cut or something like that could bring this into, some sort of artificial fictional feeling. So in a way, like I appreciate that impulse, because I would be afraid of going the other way, where you do just make this into this sort of hypothetical historical fantasy that you're kind of making up. But at the same time, if you are just presenting it, it's I don't know. And then it is sort of, why am I here looking at it, other than obviously remembering the past, and which I think we can go a lot. You can get a lot of mileage out of the ideas on this, but at the same time, I think it is like an experiential movie, and it is just like a meditation. Like you're there meditating for the duration. The music is there also, but it's also like kind of drone music, experimental, repetitive music. Not necessarily. I mean, it's dark, but it's not made to swing you necessarily in one direction or another. Yeah, it's difficult. It'd be difficult to approach something like this.
You're
So what
totally
was-
right. The risk of that would be becoming obscene almost, or offensive,
Right.
which is,
Like
I mean,
saying that,
which is
like,
what
see, they
really
have
would have.
doubts, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
What was
well,
you
I guess-
guys' what was your emotional reaction though, Mark? Like if we're talking like experientially, like this movie as experience, how did you feel?
really not much more than just the general unsettlingness
Okay.
of it all.
Okay.
Yeah. Was that what was your
No, I mean I cried
experience like?
I kept crying the whole time. That's why it was so like I
Okay, well
the
that's
poor
quite
guy
different
next
then.
to me. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
I would never give anything 5. For me 5 is like I'm like intensely moved, like intensely involved, and this was like I can't remember the first part of it that sort of, I mean, I wasn't like sobbing, but like I had tears like off and on the entire time, and then the end I really started. And so it hit me quite, like you just saying just now about them talking about the contraption. I almost just started tearing up just hearing you talk about it. And that was, I mean, I would just start crying when they'd be like mid dialogue, just imagining being that way about human beings and being able to talk about it like you're talking about any other subject. I don't know, that's just very powerful to me. So it was, it's interesting hearing you talk about your qualms with it now, because I'm like, oh, I can completely see where you're coming from, and I actually agree with you, but I didn't have any of those thoughts during, and I think it's because I was so emotional. Whereas if I were more analytical about it, I probably would have felt the way that you did, if that makes any sense. Because I do now. I understand where you're coming from completely now. But I was so moved and like so in it that I didn't have any of those sort of thoughts at the time.
That's interesting. I kind of felt that the way it's made and its distancing factor maybe prevented me like from feeling more human or or like I was in the room really at all. It was just like so sucked, so much emotion is sucked out of it, so that I'm thinking about it more in that sort of like, oh, like a looking down from on high at this like absurd thing that these people are doing. But yeah, I don't know if that's the movie's fault or if it depends on who you are or what it is. But yeah, there is sort of like a more, yeah. Then they're both very valid responses, I think, to this movie. Like a hollowing feeling, like just feeling hollow and like kind of stripped of emotion, and like
That's me with Under the Skin.
Oh.
What you're describing is, yeah. And people describe Under the Skin as being what I just described for Zone. So it's very odd. But that's how I felt, like hollowed out and judgmental almost. because I wasn't in it. I wasn't in it.
Interesting.
So
Sure.
yeah.
Well, but at least, I guess under the skin, there is some access to the human characters, even though they're not like, none of them are major characters that she runs into. But obviously when she's with the physically deformed guy, and we're able to project and understand how he's interpreting, what she's saying, that she has no idea, or that scene on the beach with all the horrible things unfolding around her that she doesn't realize. I guess that's for me where that tension was productive. And in here we don't really have that, and that's not really what it's about. Although there are the Jewish servants who are kind of in the background constantly too, which does make it easy to think about how they're processing everything that the family is oblivious to.
When I would say for me, one of the scenes that I was really emotional about was the flowers, that they were putting the ashes in the dirt to grow the flowers. And then that's
Ugh.
why it turned red, because their
Mm.
blood was part of the redness of the. So I just started crying. I mean, thinking about like someone putting human ashes to grow flowers, just like the. Yeah. So for me, the emotional part had nothing to do with characters. It had to do with the sounds of like the screaming, the chimneys, they're, and then the character of the aunt or the mother who comes in and is it's like in the middle of the night and she can hear the screams and it's dark. I mean, those moments to me are just I don't know. It really, really reached me, and I felt very, very engaged, as opposed to it being like a clinical detachment, which is how I felt with Under the Skin.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I wonder if maybe it does have to do with who you are more, or like what speaks to you in a sort of artistic way,
I think
like your receptivity to certain things.
there's also like depends on maybe the day of the week too. I feel like there's a certain time where I might turn this on at a certain time where I would just really be affected more emotionally in a more direct way. Maybe depending on what I'm thinking about in a more direct kind of way.
I really did think about going to see this one more time before we talked about it, because I feel like if I did go in a little bit more prepared uh, for how we were going to stay here, all the way to the end,
Right.
that but it wasn't one I was necessarily chomping at the bit to go and
Well,
revisit
and Marc,
again right away.
you're usually pretty measured, aren't you? Are you very moody? I mean,
he can
I
get a little
hide it
bitchy
well.
sometimes.
okay.
With Seth,
Well,
I have my true self comes out with Seth.
but when you watch movies, aren't you normally in a pretty even keel state of mind?
I mean, I guess, I suppose so, but I mean, I have pretty emotional responses to
Yeah.
the ones that I really like. Actually, maybe more so there than in any other part of life. So,
Interesting.
which I think
Okay.
maybe something that a lot of movie people maybe would relate to.
Yeah.
Are we
Because
just
there were
dead inside?
yeah,
Like
because
in
there
Challenger
were
2.
points during Under the Skin where I was at least like kind of moved. I wouldn't say like overwhelmingly or anything, but and yeah, but with this one, I do still like this movie because the commitment to what it's doing, I think, does work, to an extent, and those little variations do go a long way. Whether it's the apple picking or the ending, which I want to talk about, because we do get a pretty unexpected rupture towards the end where the commandant is walking along and starts kind of retching mysteriously in a moment that I've seen a lot of people liken to the moment at the end of The Act of Killing, where we a documentary about the Malaysian genocide.
It's like murder
Got that right.
sickness.
We covered that on the on this podcast a while ago. Right, where it's kind of mysterious as to, is he having a moral qualm or is he showing off? Although there's no audience in this, since this isn't a documentary.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden we are in the present day at the Auschwitz like memorial
Is
Yeah.
it
or
to be
museum or whatever
interpreted
it
that
is.
he's transported there, or he has a vision of sorts?
That's
What do
the
Isn't
you
it the
guys
same
think?
question.
building?
Yeah. I mean, I guess
I
it's
I
thought there was
left
believe
the
it is.
same.
open. We cut back
y-
to him after this sequence, and he's like just staring down a hallway where we left him staring down a hallway. So I don't know. It almost
Which,
feels mystical or something at a certain point.
like, I
Like he gets a
assume that when we cut
glimpse.
back to him, he's still in the past. But the question is, yeah, is he seeing that, and is that affecting his retching, and why?
Yeah, they're
And
there.
it's kind
He's
of up to
there at
you how to
the
interpret that.
Holocaust Museum, and they show us people cleaning, like staff
Just
in
cleaning
modern
people, yeah.
day, cleaning
Yeah.
the exhibits, which of course has its own like perverse, weird, dark
Normalization of
humor to it,
yes.
like
Yeah.
which is very this movie in its way, in a way.
I think he's retching because I mean, I could be wrong. But my interpretation of that was that his body knows what's going on even though his mind doesn't. Like
Mm.
like
I
the
think
body
it.
is reacting
Mhm.
to the like what's going on even though he can't face it, his body is.
I do think it welcomes that definitely as an
Mm-hmm.
interpretation. I don't necessarily like that one because I don't
Mm.
know, that comes close to giving us kind of a conventional, like, look, even he can't in the end quite stomach this, which is not
Right, as
really
if
what I
we
want from these.
yeah, as if we are all built with some sort of mechanism that tells us when we know we're doing something wrong, which is like a whole metaphysical. I don't know. We don't really have.
Conscience,
Yeah,
Jiminy Cricket.
yeah, which is
Mhm.
up for debate for anyone, but it is like a bit of it's a leap for a movie to make, I guess.
Mm.
And
Well,
I think it's
yeah, I
likely
don't
that
know.
that is what's intended,
I think
but
so, but
the
I do agree
interpretation
with
that
Seth.
I of stuff that I've read about this, like the one that I think I like the most is that because we do cut back to him, which I think suggests that he's seeing this or getting some sort of feeling of it. And so what is he seeing exactly? He's seeing all of his work, and him, is being part of this bureaucracy that's all about maintenance and efficiency and everything. And in the end, it all ends up as this monument to how horrible the whole thing was, which
And it's still
itself
kept
is
up
being
efficiently.
maintained daily. Right, like that
Mm.
people are the work people are doing now is to completely um condemn through history what his whole life's work. So if this is him reacting to that, to disgust at his all his work coming to nothing, to be
Mm-hmm.
completely the opposite of vindicated. I know that was the most interesting perspective on it to me. I think that would work
I
the
like
best
that.
from what I want from this movie.
That is so interesting that you're comfortable with the idea that
But
he could see into the future, but not so much that we all have an inner compass.
well,
Like those are
not
both
like he's having an actual, but maybe it is a sense that maybe this will all come to naught. I don't know if it's a
okay. Not that he can
literal, like,
actually
psychic
literally.
vision.
No, I mean I still like it, but I'm just surprised that you would say that. But I do like it. I like that idea.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that
it is a weird sort of like curse through time that he's witnessing. It is this. I don't think. I mean, Glazer's far from saying that it's like silly or anything like that that we keep up something like the Holocaust Museum. Like this movie is in tradition of like, which is a very important tradition of upholding and remembering. Like that's what we need to do forever. Like that we remember that these horrible
so that
things
we don't
happened.
repeat it.
But it is this also this double-edged thing of like the tragedy that this is so awful that it has to go forward into time and be maintained at length. And swept and dusted forever. It is that it's just always going to be horrible forever in that way. It's a double edge to remembering. Yeah.
That's what his father said. I read that when Glazer told his dad that he was making this movie, his dad was like, "Why would you do that? Let it rot." That's what he
Mm.
said.
Which for some people, I mean, especially anyone who's directly involved in some sort of cultural way, or their family, I don't know, I couldn't blame them for it necessarily.
Yeah, there's the let it rot idea, and like, why would you dig this up? Like, and then there's also the, if we don't talk about it, then we can't recognize if we were in danger of repeating. So I feel like it's very, yeah, depends on the person's conviction who's making it.
And I will say that I wasn't really sure what to do with that when we were actually watching it. It wasn't until afterwards when I was going through different takes and everything, and that actually, of course, was Mike D'Angelo's preferred interpretation of the ending. And I was like, you know what? I do think that would be the best way to make sense out of it. So gotta credit my source there.
You got
it. MLA style.
If I could ask, and one more bullet point, I guess. There's a lot of discourse that this movie is about us now. Like, there's a lot of people talking about like how it relates to us now. I was just curious, like, there's a lot of people talking about like, oh, it's like how we're always exposed on social media to something like what's happening in Gaza, but we just have to scroll past it on the internet or something, which I thought was interesting. I don't know how deep that is or how intentional that was or what was going on with Glazer as far as speaking to now necessarily. I don't know that he was. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I definitely thought of Gaza a lot during this, I'll be honest, but that's been on my mind in a lot of different ways. But if you're looking at the specifics of this, like this mainly applies to people who are like knowingly and willfully and happily complicit while ignoring what the uglier parts of it, at least when it comes to the rest of the family. So I don't know if that quite maps onto, our experience of maybe just having comfortable lives here and being upset about what we read, but keep scrolling. But then again, what we do from all the way over here, it's like, I'm not sure quite how that goes. But again, that's my biggest problem with this movie, is that it does not necessarily put the mirror back on a sympathetic audience in any way.
I think that it has to do with I think it's a little bit of a big leap to say that someone who is in the vicinity of something going on is the same as me on my phone in a completely different part of the planet.
Sure. Like, I guess, I was just using that as an example.
You know what I mean?
But yeah.
No. I think you're right though, Seth, because I've seen this happen too, where people are like, we do the same thing as them. It's like, okay, well, there's like levels of removal and separation, and like, Marc's point is like, well, what could we do? I mean, there's a sense of like helplessness that comes from even the greatest conviction of compassion, whereas they were literally next door. So I think this might be, I think the more thing I'd be comfortable with, where I feel like it makes more sense to say, would be if you are close to things that are going wrong and you do nothing, then that's what this is saying. Like, if in your immediate environment, okay, you're like around a dysfunctional relationship or a relationship where somebody's being abused and you do nothing, that is kind of similar to being in a situation where you're just letting it go and you could do something and you're not. Versus us doing something about a foreign country a million miles away that has nothing, we have no bearing on.
Yeah. There's more of being actually a part of the mechanism that is causing things, which, my friend Carter, he saw this and he was also kind of like, yeah, it's not like silence is violence. This is like, for instance, like billionaires that are like actually involved in the world, or people who are actually like,
Have
you know,
influence.
have an influence on these things. And so often I think the mindset of whether it's a Nazi or a billionaire perpetuating systems that are like totally toxic, it's this idea that, well, somebody else is going to do this anyway. So since I'm a good person, I might as well step in and make sure this goes better than it would, or something like that, even though it's still, you're just making Auschwitz more efficient or something, or more humane, quote unquote, by being more efficient. Like, yeah, which is, again, look at what you're saying, in that case.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, the risk of taking this back into sensitive territory, I mean, there are people that are more or less living right on the other side of the wall to what's happening in Gaza, and are pretty enthusiastic about what is going on there, while living in a relative comfort. And that's something that's pretty relevant, even if it's not something I can directly, relate to,
Right.
myself. But that's also kind of an easy observation to make,
Right.
because we
I
don't
agree.
happen to be in that circumstance. But so it sounds like no one's going to unwatch this, right?
No.
I'm
I
probably not gonna hop to go
liked
see it
but-
again, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to see it again, but
Yeah.
as a one-time experience, or as just I thought, and especially in the theater, to have the sound.
I definitely
Yes, I
would,
was really
ironically,
happy
take
we went to
advantage
go
of
see it in the
that. Yeah.
theater.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't urge anyone to see this necessarily if they're not ready to just totally ruin their day, because my day was ruined kind of. But yeah, the black screens and the red screens in a theater, even just for 60 seconds at a time, is just so intense. There's like a point where you can see people kind of looking around in the theater that you're in, like, what do we do? What is this? Like, it's intense, and the music is so amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, I was very
Definitely.
happy to
Yeah.
see it that way.
And if you're a person who like watches the
Mhm.
Oscars and is like us, where we have to see everything, then you'd see it anyway.
Yeah.
For sure. And
yeah.
I think it's part of a pretty strong group of nominees overall. Like, there's probably more that I like than I don't. I'm rooting for Poor Things, probably. That was definitely my favorite
Yeah.
of one of my favorite. It was definitely my favorite
Same.
American film
Same, yeah.
of last year. But I would put this somewhere close to ones that I also liked, like Anatomy of a Fall. Yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon, The Holdovers. Not movies I was crazy about, but found a lot of things to like about them.
Yeah, for sure.
So pretty strong crop this year, and I would not be against a Best Director win or Best Sound. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll go to Yorgos.
Oh yeah, obviously that. I think he made the best
Yeah.
movie, so
Yeah,
go for it. But then again, Glazer will have to wait another 10 years probably before he makes another movie to get a chance.
Which is a bummer, because I actually think I'm, as much as I think overall I like Yorgos movies more, but I think Under the Skin is like way better than all of his movies, and I just am very excited about whatever the hell Glazer is going to do. I think like the best is still ahead for Glazer. I think he's like figuring something out, and it's going to like culminate, and it might even make the movies that came before make more sense for me. Like, he's in the middle of a sentence, and I'm excited what he's gonna do. Yeah, for sure.
Well said.
Well, let's just hope he fits in enough films before the end of his life, because at this rate, he's going to have to pick up the pace.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, Amy, before we let you go, I want to
I'm
give you our
afraid.
special Unwatchables questionnaire.
Okay.
And these are pretty basic, just, kind of preference questions. And since I'm kind of springing them on you, whatever comes to mind. But I am going to start with the first big question, which is, Amy Hensarling, what is your favorite film?
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Whoa, cool.
All right.
Mike Nichols, 1966. That I mean, I can
Very good.
elaborate, but it will be here for an hour.
Okay,
But
well,
that is
no
my
further
fa-
questions. but-
Yeah, that's my favorite film of all time, not to be changed. I will be surprised if I ever see anything I love more.
All right. Go check out anything that Amy's written on Letterboxd about that.
I have not written that about that
Oh,
film.
really?
No,
Ooh.
I don't know if I can.
What? Why
Mm.
not? I want it now.
I don't know. Maybe I'll do a audio only episode of that.
Whoa,
So I
yeah.
can talk about it for half an hour
There we
and
go.
uninterrupted. There you
So
go.
sometimes
Seth.
it's daunting to write about the,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
big ones.
I
something
could
like
probably
that.
talk about it more than I could write about it. Let's say that.
Okay, well, start cooking up that.
Yeah, maybe I'll do it on my birthday.
Yeah, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf ASMR?
Yeah, which is the opposite of that
Yeah.
movie. They're
Right.
yelling in,
Oh
yeah,
my God.
drunkenly. Yeah,
Make it go down a lot easier.
yeah.
All right, so what is a film you could think of where your opinion significantly changed in either direction? Now, this is a
The
question you've asked people, so you must have thought
I know.
about it.
Well, there are ones where it went from like 1 to 4. I want to say nothing's coming to mind except for
pretty-
Cleo from 5 to 7, the Varda movie.
Okay, from bad to good?
Yeah, no, yes. I
Okay.
saw it a long time ago, didn't like it. I'm not great with like French New Wave stuff
I'm
in
picky
general.
too. Yeah.
I'm very like Breathless, and I won't get into that either. We'll be here.
Oh man,
but-
we got a bond
or
over
Jules
that
at Gym.
sometime.
Jules and Jim. But I had to rewatch it for Lau's episode actually, and I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna like it because I didn't like it at all the first time, and I loved it the second time, and that was very, very surprising.
See, Varda's
think
the
it's 'cause of-
exception for me. Yeah, I like Varda.
Oh, yeah, she's just luminous. Like she has an exuberance in her films, so I changed my opinion for the better.
All right, wonderful. Now,
Hmm.
what would you think of as maybe your most unpopular opinion that
Oh my
goes
gosh.
way against the grain? Maybe even infuriates others.
The most recent one is the Iron Claw, which I wish I didn't even post about because everyone seems to get a lot out of that, and I
Mm.
hated it. And I couldn't even review it at the time because I was just so bummed out by it. But that's the most recent, and then probably it's got to be something with Lynch. Blue Velvet, Lost Highway, Inland Empire. I just no. But my Blue Velvet review, I'm very proud of because it took me like 3 days to write it because I tried to defend myself.
That's one of those.
Hmm.
I'm honestly, everybody's always saying start with Blue Velvet when they get introduced to Lynch, and I'm always like, I'm surprised as many people like Blue Velvet as they do, to be honest.
Yeah, they do.
I don't know. I love it,
Eraserhead, I
but
gave
yeah.
a half star.
Oh, okay.
I think
What about
that's a
Mulholland
5
Drive? Do
star
you
for
like
Mark.
Mulholland Drive? You can just say yes or no.
Oh yes,
Okay.
but Eraserhead. That'd probably be the biggest one, Mark, because you gave that 5, didn't you?
I did actually,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
And
gave that
that's
half.
actually one I came around on that I always have been kind of back and forth
Mm.
on with not being sure how to feel about it. But the last time I watched it, knocked my socks off.
Yeah. I also am not good with that other guy who did Climax. What's his name?
Oh, Gasper? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he seems
Lovers
like
on the Bridge.
he seems like an asshole anyway.
Oh wait,
Mm.
Lovers on the Bridge. That was
Oh.
Leo
Is that different?
Carax.
Karras. Okay. No,
Yeah.
that's another one. Annette. Oh my gosh, I can't stand that movie. Annette. That's him, right?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
sorry.
Holy Motors. which
I
is an
haven't seen
awesome
that. I'm
movie,
too
by the way.
afraid.
Okay.
Afraid to get that right. Who did Irreversible, Mark?
That's Gasper.
That was
Noé.
Gasper Noé.
That's
yeah.
Gasper.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's excellent in a very hard to. That's an
Yeah.
unwatchable for sure. That's when you had D'Angelo.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Quintessential unwatchable film. So, your most unwatchable film. You could take this as something that is just too upsetting to get through.
I know what it is.
And it could be something you like or not. Oh, good. What is it?
The War Zone.
Oh, I
don't
put
know what
that off
is.
for a long time.
I don't know what that
It's
is.
You guys haven't seen it? Neither of you?
No, but that's that Tim Roth directed, right?
Yes, it is.
That's on our
That-
list, actually, if anyone ever wants to choose it.
Oh man. I'm pretty sure that if someone gave me actual money, I would not watch it again. That one is really, really hard. I don't know if y'all know what it's about, but
Nope.
it's the only movie that Tim Roth directed, I believe. It has Ray Winston and
From Sexy Beast?
from Sexy Beast. He's the dad, and it's pretty bad as far as the topic is
It's
concerned.
abuse-related family stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's like a very, very long scene of something, and I almost threw up, and I knew it was fake, but I really did. I thought I was gonna be sick, and I still remember it. It's like palpable. So that
I
is a
think-
movie I would
Yeah,
never rewatch.
movies aren't fake; they're movies.
I know. Well, they did such a good job. I suppose I should give it props for how. But it like I was like, why would anyone make this? You know, it's kind of like one of those movies where you're like, what purpose does this serve?
Right.
You guys probably feel that way a lot.
We do, unfortunately, or I do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
You're like, what?
We do
why
about
is-
different movies sometimes, but yeah.
Oh yeah, very different
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
speaking of that, our final question is
Okay.
Oh,
Southland Tales, good or bad?
I've never seen it.
That is actually a pretty popular answer, I'm finding out.
Really? Is that the director of Donnie Darko?
yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. No, I've never seen it. Is it? What do you think, Mark? Is it good?
Oh no.
Oh,
I love it.
But
But-
ask Seth.
I was about to say Seth probably.
We're looking for a tiebreaker.
I mean,
Well, not really, because
Oh,
we had a whole episode of Seth and Nathan Raymond just covering it in love.
we were rolling down the hill, laughing and giggling.
Yeah.
talking
And
about
Mark's
all
over
the
here.
And
layers
I've been-
of plot,
I've been trying to ruin their fun relentlessly ever since.
and it just won't
you
work.
And,
can't. It just won't work. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we might have only gotten one answer from someone who's even seen it so far.
It's
I
pretty
don't know.
popular. There's people.
Better
we
luck
gotta
next
get,
time.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I actually, I kind of wish Donnie Darko were unwatchable so you guys could cover it. I feel like that would be like a really fun episode. Maybe I'll do
You like that
Donnie
one?
Darko. I do, and I've
Oh.
kind of like always
Hmm.
wanted to do it for progress.
See, this is proof that I never know what you're gonna like. So I was gonna say like, there's no way you would like
Mhm.
Southland Tales, but not that Southland Tales is a lot like Donnie Darko. It's pretty different, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I just never
Well,
know.
Donnie
what you're gonna like.
Darko is full of stuff that you could like. I mean, you could either take it as total garbage, which I could understand, or you could actually be like, I'm going to take this seriously, or as seriously as, it sort
Okay.
of presents itself.
That's the way to Southland Tales for sure. That's
That's
how you'll stumble down the stairs to
Ah.
Southland Tales.
Is Southland Tales like Inland Empire?
No,
Like where? Okay.
Well, I don't
'cause-
know. Do you mean
No.
like filmed like that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, just where like you either get it or you don't. And if you don't, you're just like incredibly miserable.
Yes, it's pretty
Oh, it
long. and it
definitely.
just- yeah. Just layers
It,
and layers of sci-fi, paranormal
Okay.
wildness. Yeah.
It's not like abstract, it's just a lot. And it in my opinion, is trying very hard to be funny and very rarely
Oh.
is. But
Does it have like a stacked cast though?
Oh yeah. Everywhere you
Okay.
look, starring
You won't
Don
believe
the Rock Johnson, and he slays it. He's so good in it. And then
like
he was
several
dissuaded
seasons
by
worth
Mark.
of
Mark
SNL
ruined his
cast
career.
members.
Oh, wait. Okay, does it have Sarah Michelle Gellar?
Yes.
Okay, that's why I
Mhm.
think that's the only one that I know.
Justin
That's it.
Timberlake, everybody's
John Lovitz, everyone.
Everyone. And Mark is like nothing.
Here we are. See, I'm just making it so that we have this same argument on every show.
You should.
It'll be our most talked about film.
Well, I'm gonna watch it
See?
now, Mark.
Don't blame me for that. But if you do, come back
blame
and
me.
we'll enter
No,
you in
I'm-
the poll.
I'm gonna watch it and then I will send you my review immediately and I will make you proud. I think that I will probably be on your side here. I'm guessing. But I don't know. Seth is the things that I'm completely in alignment with Seth on are interesting. There's no consistency there. It just
Nope.
depends.
Possession,
Very, very.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you come on and love the sex demon movie, and I never know what to expect anymore.
I know that's my claim to fame here.
Yeah.
I love a sex demon.
All right, on that note, Amy, this
Yeah.
was
Thank you.
a
Such
joy,
pleasure.
like
Yeah.
it always is. And
Yeah.
please check out Watch This List on all the different platforms. That is that coming out? Is it every Thursday now, or
Yes, every
Okay.
Thursday,
Wow, every Thursday.
except for
Alright.
Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day was on a Wednesday.
Do you want to say
Okay.
what's
But
coming up,
otherwise-
or
yeah, anything
She
you wanna
said. She
tease?
said is. Well, yeah. Next week is me and Maddie talking about Perfect Blue, the
Ooh.
anime, and
oh, but I guess that won't
someone's
be
watching
relevant by
me.
the time this comes out. I don't know. What
yeah, good
what sh-
point. I don't know when this is coming out.
Well, this will your episode will already be out by the time people are hearing this. So go check it out now.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And then Adam and I are going to do Memoria, which I think that both of you will appreciate.
Yeah.
Memoria.
yeah.
Memoria
I like
is
blue,
great.
perfect
Love it.
blue. So yeah.
Perfect Blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Actually,
Yes.
I was like, whoa. Like
I
we're
watched
getting
it as a
into
date
some-
movie one time. Terrible date.
Oh
movie.
man, Seth, terrible
We were like, I don't know, anime. We're watching anime.
with
Yeah,
rape.
he brought a date to Zone of Interest too, which was an interesting choice.
Seth.
We hit it off. I don't know what happened afterwards. I don't know why I wound up eating Valentine's Day cookies by myself.
By yourself.
No, I didn't bring
Started
First
out
date.
good.
Yeah, and you took Marc and Tony with you too. That's so funny.
Mhm. I was his date.
She
Family
sympathized
affair.
too much with the family.
Yeah, not a good sign. Not a good sign.
Unwatchables is produced by Tony Scarpitti, hosted by me, Marc Dottavio, and Seth Troyer, with artwork by Micah Kraus. You can find Seth and I on Letterboxd under Marc Dottavio and Sloth Troyer. You can also check us out at unwatchableспod.com for links to our Twitter and Instagram, or support us on Patreon for bonus content and to have a say in what we watch. Thanks for listening.